Hi, this is Exercise, a show where I sometimes look at other Bandai hobby offering, less of seeing how authentic they are, more looking at how they compare to Gunpla and are they good companion piece, or maybe you would be interested in similar style, or in this case, a good direction for SD Gundam to continue in. This time we are looking at the Souzou Mashin Den Wataru Ryujinmaru. Now the Souzou Mashin Den is a reboot, reimagining, retelling of the original Majin Den. So a lot of the names and a lot of the characters would be very similar to that original version, but they are updated somewhat. As what we do here, we rate the kits with saga, style, action, gimmick, and absence. Style is how much does the model, in this case Ryujinmaru, resemble its counterparts in the anime, games, manga, or other media. Like modern Gunpla, this Ryujinmaru is designed with the 3D model for the animation, so it is pretty much one-to-one to what you see in the show, aside from things like the joints for the necessary movements, actions required, and a few, realistic modeling things. But yeah, otherwise, this is very accurate to our new version of Ryujinmaru. Aside from a few coloring differences, that's probably just the shadows. Maybe not for the knee armor, but minor enough. Taking a closer look to the head, it is actually kinda amazing how such a big head have so little assembly gaps that is not the color separation. You can see there is a bit more of the oddities of assembly for the cockpit hatch. Pretty much this is where Wataru would go inside Ryujinmaru, but the effect of the clear red piece on top of the gold piece is very good. And the top camera and the eyes are one piece, much like the EG. In fact, I would say a lot of this kit is, well, this kit is like an EG that you can build with tools, but unlike the early EG like the RX-78-2, it responds to use a lot better. Part separation for the head is very good, aside from needing a bit of panel lining for the face mask. Yeah, Ryujinmaru's head is very good, despite having many pieces. The chest is simple enough, pretty much just a clamshell front and back, as you can see the line here, but mostly got covered by the head. And yeah, color separation for a bit of detail on the chest is separate pieces, so it is fairly good. I didn't panel line this because the show's animation style is less grimy because they are in a cyberspace. Just color separation, that's that. Skirt, Ryujinmaru doesn't have skirt armor. He is a dragon after all. He just decided to become a mech for Wataru to pilot to fight evil. And yeah, that's where you see the legs. While a straight split of a clamshell isn't ideal for Ryujinmaru's proportion, you don't really see his side, like the side of his thigh. So it is actually pretty okay to do it like this here. As for the lower leg, we are going back to the straight down the middle split. And that is okay because there is a sharp angle on the lower leg for the knee guard, shins, and ankle guard. Of course, they will look more prevalent when you have, when you're looking straight down at them. But on the side, in most angles, it is a lot more acceptable. Same goes to the back. The channel to hide the assembly line is a lot wider than a lot of the Gundam counterparts, so it looks a lot more natural. As for the feet, he's a dragon, so he got claws, but the heel is still a solid piece. And as usual, Bandai is really putting effort on the bottom of the feet, except for the claws. But you don't really get to see the claws like this, so it is fine. The back, this is actually a shield as well as a bow. I guess we'll talk about that when we get to Gimmick, but otherwise, Ryujinmaru just have a simple holder for the sword, Toruken. But yeah, otherwise, aside from a few pegs for attaching other things, it is simple, clean, but you don't really look at it, so it's pretty fine. Up to the arms, I take a shot at the top before because how these white claws are in one piece with a deep groove. If you don't panel line it, you'll see a lot of white showing. It's actually okay if we don't ever look at it directly from the top, but sometimes we do, especially on the show, so I panel lined it anyways. The gold claws have slightly less of this problem because they are metallic, so it is naturally reflective. The dragon emblem on both shoulder is a separate piece. They are very nice. And then another dragon head on the right shoulder. The teeth are unfortunately the same as the rest of their jaw, but that's minor enough. We understand this is part of the mech, not really Ryujinmaru himself, so it's okay. Single piece bicep, and then the forearm is actually a tube for the elbow and then one for the wrist. Kinda like Zog, which is excellent in itself. And then, he's a dragon, so he got claws for hand. It is a two-piece, but it is fairly solid once you assemble it. In fact, I have the sword on because you do have to open up the hand for the sword to put the sword on, so I just keep it on to begin with. So yeah, overall style-wise, this new version of Ryujinmaru is definitely a simplified version of the classic one, but it is still very easily recognizable, and the fact that it is a toolless build, it is very impressive. About the only problem I encounter is at the back of the arms, where I'm not sure if it is intentional or that's just a problem. They decided to keep the totally toolless, for the whole kit. Yeah, it has a lot of tearing marks, even with a nipper. So other than a few places where you wouldn't see with normal poses and very minor details on the side, the Ryujinmaru kit is excellent on the style department. I will give it an S in style because there are places to deduct points. Next is action. Action isn't just the number of the articulations, but also how useful those articulations are. For Ryujinmaru, head is on a double ball joint. There's actually a ball joint on the bottom of the neck to the body, and then one more to the top of the head. So he has quite a bit of range of movement, but due to the size of his head, you don't actually get to see them. And then the torso is on a ball joint, but you would be inevitably be moving the pivot on the waist as you play around with it. Still, that is a lot of waist movement for a SD style of design. For the thigh, they are on a ball joint, but without skirts, Ryujinmaru can, let's take the ball out, basically do a straight split easily, sideways 45 degree, pretty generous I would say. And then the knee is a single joint going about 30 degree, not enough to do a knee blow, but enough to have a very stable stance. And the foot is on a ball joint, just mostly side to side for a stable stand. And the cross actually have toes articulation. This is presumably for the kit bashing play. This series, at least on the model kit and toy side, is promoting. This is a feature, or this is an action that Ryujinmaru can take. And then the arms, we have a, well, not really crazy, this is pretty standard for Bandai kits this day, but still impressive for a SD proportion mech to have a very wide shoulder. And then the actual arm is on a pivot to the shoulder armor. So between that, you got a lot of room to move. You got a standard pivot, elbow over 90 degrees. And yeah, if I bother to open up this arm, Ryujinmaru can easily hold Toruken with both of his hands. In fact, I think it is possible, yeah, it is even possible for him to do a over the head strike pose. Again, very impressive for a SD proportion model. So, having said that, let's try to Kung Fu fight with Ryujinmaru. I didn't thought this would be possible, but yep, super easy, barely an inconvenience. He's just this stable. So I guess this is a easy S for action. Next is Gimmick. Gimmicks are the onboard weapon, optional weapons, and other functionalities of the mech in question. For Ryujinmaru, doesn't really have the cockpit turning, shining and allowing Wataru to come in and out, nor do we have a Wataru figurines, but oh well. We have a bit of a look at the Toruken, two-color piece, and have enough handle to be hold two-handed, and it is super stable once you get it in the hand. The backpack also functions as a shield. That's what this handle is for. So just your normal universal handle. There is an energy effect when it is used as a shield in the show. Doesn't come with the kit. Minor point deduction, but overall, this is pretty good. And it also works as a bow. And as you can see, it have gears on the arms to facilitate the bow. So yeah, I think it is pretty good enough for a EG style sort of kit to have bow arms with gears that it will just collapse or extend together. Now, not only does the claws on Ryujinmaru's feet have movement, the head on the side can open its mouth. In fact, here is the neck piece. It is an option piece for a, I guess, Ryujinmaru taking direct control of the mech version of himself. Ryujinmaru is where Ryujin, the dragon god, resides and fight with Wataru. So this head on here is presumably Ryujin taking over Ryujinmaru for direct control. But this is also part of the kit bashing play with this line of kits where they all have the same joints, not just at the shoulder and thigh, but also the lower legs and the forearms, etc. You can literally have, they are literally all, independent module that you can mix and match to build your own machine. That is nice. Or machine, actually, in this case. And yeah, you can definitely attach other attachments to the shoulder armor as well, if you want to. So yeah, gimmick-wise, I can't complain about Ryujinmaru. It has most things represented, or rather, everything that is physical is represented in the kit with a bit more, with, the dragon head and the dragon claw functionalities. No arrow and shield effects for the bow, but, we don't always get beam shot effects in Gundam kits anyway, so I still keep it an S for gimmick because of the overall playability of the kit. Now, absence. Here is the point where some people would think I should be more harsh towards this kit, if not the whole line. But to me, I think this is where Bandai should plant their foot, so to speak. Ryujinmaru is kind of expensive if you consider what I said, that it is an EG kit. The MSRP is 1,500 yen before tax. That's more expensive than a lot of Witch from Mercury mass production mobile suits. Slightly cheaper than Aerial itself, but not quite, like the value proposition isn't quite there. Like considering, put Gundam sideways, you are getting about as much plastic in the box. So it is not a particularly attractive option, at least by looking at the amount of plastic. However, this does have a lot nicer colors and part separation, even to this guy. Like this sheen on a flat curvy surface is a lot more pronounced than the separation on an edge on a white part. Not to mention, we got camera for the color and not here with, this is first EG, but the point still stands. And you wouldn't dare to imagine having such nice features done on a Gundam for the same price. So they got a good price range to sit on. It is up to Bandai to figure out how to present the value proposition to people to convince them to buy these kits. As a lot of, I would say, Duma points out, the Souzou Mashin Den kits wasn't selling well, but at the same time, every non-Gundam Bandai hobby kits are not selling as fast as Gundam would anyways. To me, it would depend on the, like I would say, the post development of this line. Like, for example, the show have another line where they have pre-built brick models where the shoulders, the arms, and the legs, everything is in cube form, and you mix and match with those. The Machine version doesn't sell well, but the Gundam version was selling like hotcakes. So, if you ask me, I think Bandai have a good engineering structure for future SD Gundam project in this line, or in this Ryujinmaru. What we had with SD Gundam for the last decade to be redone in this format. It is clear that Bandai wouldn't go back to Legend BB. Maybe because of polycaps, maybe because it's probably people have been hanging on to the old BB Warrior price point where they're super low, but they expect super modern technology input into them, despite you can't have these fancy scopes and color separation, without a bit of investment. So, with MGSD selling pretty well, I do think this is where Bandai should take it. SDCS was a good attempt, but I think what people really want are better color separation than actually better action. In fact, Ryujinmaru here demonstrated that you can have excellent action with good color separation with the advance of technology that we have, that Bandai have made for the last decade. So absence is an A because I feel like Bandai could do a bit better on the value proposition of Ryujinmaru, if not for the whole line. But at least when I got this guy, this Ryujinmaru, the value proposition was good. Because for the first edition, they have this collective extra parts that you can put on him. Presumably, this dragon head is another weapon. And then this extra dragon body is a more powerful backpack. At least it looks more powerful. Let's see if I can attach the head anywhere. Oh, there's a half. There we go. So yeah, for the first wave, Bandai do throw in a bit of extra option parts to improve its value proposition. I think they should just keep it in. But, they didn't. I'm not sure if they would continue this new version of Wataru universe, but this whole package is probably what Bandai should be looking at if they want people to agree with the value proposition of the line. If it is Gundam, they can, probably just, pretty much this. It would be fine. So the verdict for the Souzou Mashin Den Wataru Ryujinmaru is S for style, S for action, S for gimmick, and A for absence. Overall, it is a good non-Gundam EG kit. And I forgot to mention it doesn't have any C-clips. So for people who does not like C-clips, you'll be fine with this. And even if I did this video a lot earlier, I would say this is a good revival of the machine line. This is a good way to revitalize those older designs to make them into a more reasonable mass production type of model kits. Now, would it find a live extension if there's a sequel? Or, if it's not doing well enough, it's probably going to just enter Bandai's, robot legacy catalog. Who knows? But to me, this is a good direction for Bandai if they want to, or when they eventually revitalize the BB Warriors. This is what they should do. I think for the same price point, people will absolutely support BB Gundams. As for Wataru, I don't know. I don't think the show is bad. That's probably the problem. The show isn't bad enough to generate talk, nor was it good enough. And the problem with Wataru have always been, it is good because the show is very much for children. So even for a chosen one saving the world story, even though it has quite a bit of, it has some famous dark element inside the story, it is still overall lighthearted. I rather see the new series as it was concluded being mostly lighthearted than trying to be super edgy and dark, because that's never what the Wataru machine universe is about. Maybe 5-10 years later it will be rediscovered and held as a cult classic. I don't know. At this point, I'm just happy we got a new Ryujinmaru. Thanks for watching. See you next time.